Hi, it's Kevin. Welcome to Relationship Ready. We appreciate you coming. Please subscribe and like and comment. We want to hear your topics and discussions that you have. And today, our guest for Relationship Ready Talks is Luke Thiers. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. How we doing?
Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. And tell us a little bit about you and what it is that might be important to know. It's about Luke.
Yeah, so I am an amateur comic, just like you. I also work in the service industry. I work in events. I'm a bartender and janitor. I currently am in a terrific relationship that started at the beginning of the pandemic and is still going strong.
Yes.
Particularly proud of that, considering that's a tough way to start a relationship.
Yep.
Kind of did everything backwards. First week, we were locked inside together watching Netflix, sitting around all the time. And, about a year in, we went out to dinner for the first time, had our first date. This few months ago, took our first trip together.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Excellent. And is that the relationship you'd like to talk about today, or is there a different relationship that you want to delve into today?
Well, you said it's something of a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, I'm grateful for this, but this one doesning have an end, at least yet.
That's great.
So I was going to talk about a relationship from a few years ago, back when I was living in Boston.
Okay.
Somebody that actually just happened to reach out to me randomly a few weeks ago. First time I talked to him in years, but it was very nice.
Okay. So tell us about the beginning of that. Give us some context.
So beginning of the relationship, I was working with this young woman at a bar I was working at in Boston. 25 years in the industry. Proud to say I almost never dated anybody I worked with. I think there is an opportunity for a lot of problematic or toxic relationships when you date people you work with, particularly when you consider the power structure of management and employees and things like that.
Yep. And that was a rule that you had starting off, or that was one that you learned very early and then just...
I would say learned pretty early on,
Okay.
and just learned it's better to avoid situations like that if possible.
Okay.
But this was someone I worked on equal footing with. I wasn't their manager. And found myself really attracted to him. Eventually made plans to hang out. And then I freaked out and I called my GM and the owner of the business in for a meeting and totally overdid it. And was like, I'm going on a date with one of the hosts. I don't know if this is appropriate. I don't know if I should cancel it. And they were both kind of like, yeah, you're not her boss, so it's fine.
Okay.
It's nice of you to talk
To
to us
recover
about
yourself.
it. Yeah, I just, again, I think there's a lot of opportunities for inappropriateness when you consider the power structure in a relationship. And this was a very intense job. We worked 14-hour days. It was a bar. But if you ever see on TV these chefs that work in these incredibly fine dining restaurants where they're putting individual leaves on things with tongs or with tweezers and stuff, that was the style of bar that we were.
Oh, okay.
So
Nice.
70-hour work weeks, they kind of
intense.
they kind of owned your ass, to put it one way.
All right.
But yeah, we went out, had a
Well, back up a little bit. Tell us about the beginning. What's your memories of when you first met, and what were your impressions, and where did that come in? Were you working already? Did you join? What happened?
So we'd apparently met a few times when I was serving her at the bar when she was hanging out there. I didn't remember these, but she told me about them later. And then when she started there as a hostess, just immediate attraction.
Okay.
Immediately hit it off. I was working so much, and at that point in my life, that the idea of being in a relationship was kind of a joke.
Okay.
But
so it wasn't in your radar or your consideration, but she was attractive. She remembered you, but you didn't remember have a first impression of her because you were just focused on work and what you were doing.
Yeah, trying to avoid any feelings developing there, at least initially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what changed after you started working together?
Really just made plans to hang out. And that's when I was kind of like, is this a date? Is this not a date? That kind of thing. And that's when I felt the need to have a discussion with my superiors to see if it was appropriate.
Because you knew it was a date at that point.
I had a feeling it was.
Okay.
It hadn't been expressly stated.
Okay.
But I had a feeling.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And where did it go from there?
So we went out. There was I think a bartending competition happening that night. I was very, very sucked into this world. That was kind of my entire life. So even the few off hours I had, I was still doing events, going to different bars, networking. Okay. So that's really the only idea of something I had to do.
Living the job and the profession, the career that you wanted, or striving for what you wanted from there?
Probably a little of both.
A little of both. Okay.
Yeah, I definitely. I've never had a lot of structure in my life, so I definitely thrived when I hit a point in the restaurant industry where it's almost like you're in boot camp. The same way a lot of people talk about not recommending this path for anybody, but a lot of people talk about joining the military, how it gave them structure and it kind of helped them, lead a more productive life from that point on. Again.
But that was your focus at the time, and then she came in as a hostess, and there was this hanging out that was going to be a date, and went from there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I saw maybe an opportunity to expand my life portfolio into something besides work.
So you were ready for something more than work at that point.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Certainly felt like it at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did that go?
Being as we're still talking and friends, I would say that's always success, right?
Okay.
We went a long time without talking, but not really on purpose.
Okay.
Live in different cities. But yeah, it was a really interesting relationship. I learned a lot about myself. And it turns out I ended up being her first boyfriend. She was a few years ago, so she was, I think, 27, 28 at that point, which is, I think, unusual, to say the least, to go that long without being in a committed relationship. But all on our own path. And it was
there was something about you that was important enough for you to be the first boyfriend.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, again, working in the restaurant industry, it can be tough to find somebody who has really any level of maturity. Say that sounds judgmental of other people, but I think especially...
But a grain of truth in there as well.
It can be a real boys' club, and that is to say, not a club for men, but there's a lot of boys in the restaurant industry, a lot of people that are maybe super focused on their career or their life, So, not that I think that I was great at those things even then, even when I was super serious about it, I might have been a little bit a level above what she was used to.
And she was in the restaurant industry as well?
Yep. Yeah.
At that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Both lifers,
Okay.
So yeah, I think she just hadn't really had a lot of opportunities for a serious relationship, or at least a lot that were appealing to her.
Okay.
So we pretty quickly got into a committed relationship. I think after the first time we slept together, a week or so into hanging out, she was like, "All right, you're my boyfriend now."
Okay.
I remember I felt very freaked out by that. So I was like, I don't feel like there's a choice,
Because you were told that?
Yeah. Yeah, that was essentially it. Yeah.
Okay.
And
freaking out was internal or external or
I
discussions or what was freaking out?
I responded out loud the way I normally do in situations like that, where I'm just sort of like, okay, let's thank you for sharing that with me. It's new information to me. I'm gonna go ahead and process that.
Okay. Which is very cordial.
Yeah, when someone's exposing themselves, regardless of how that makes me feel, I try and not make them feel more exposed. Okay. Not sure where that impulse comes from. Probably a lifetime of serving people, especially people who are drinking, right?
Yep.
So yeah, there's always an impulse in that situation. I know when I start feeling nervous, there's an impulse to kind of keep things calm. And make everybody feel respected and listened to, and make it known that, like, I'm processing this,
Okay. So how was the processing?
Well, I talked to my roommate the next day, and I was like, I'm super freaked out. I think this girl's crazy. That's not a normal way of talking. She's not a normal girl. And he kind of reminded me that I was, like, kind of sweating her for a few weeks before we even talked, and, like, how I'd been talking about her a lot. And he was like, just give it a chance, Just don't exit out just because you don't like the language immediately,
So you were reminded of the other parts of her that weren't just the, hey, we're jumping into this right away.
Exactly, yeah. It was really, I think, a lot of her inexperience around relationships that caused her to act in a way that was unusual to me. Okay. And I think unusual in general, to be fair. But unusual isn't always bad. And it wasn't, from my perspective, it wasn't like, I want to date other people. Like, again, I hadn't dated anybody in a long time. Okay. It wasn't that end of the commitment thing that bothered me. It was more sort of the suddenness of it and the sort of like...
So you had the interest in her, but the pace was, because it was so sudden, was what freaked you out. And you backed off and went, okay, let me process this through. Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong in relationships of kind of setting boundaries for the sake of setting boundaries. Mm-hmm. It's a good practice to be in.
Okay.
But
and were you good at that at the time, or was this
No.
like pushing? No.
No, I don't think I would have known what you were talking about if you had said that sentence to me at that time. It's been like, all right, yeah, no, I think due to the nature, especially of my job, and just a lack of experience in that area in my life, I really didn't have any understanding of boundaries or why it was important. So yeah, I think my reaction to that ultimately was just kind of like, okay, yeah, we're in a relationship now, cool.
Okay.
I'm going to choose to flow. Yeah, I'm going to choose to focus on the parts of this I want and not the parts that I don't want, or the parts that freak me out.
Okay. And do you know what the parts of it were that you wanted?
Oh yeah, I mean, she was nice and funny and super hot. Like that's somebody I want to date.
3 trifectas,
Like really a very likable person in a lot of ways.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So after you slept together, she said you're dating. What did dating mean, and what was dating like?
Yeah, I mean, the way she let it out was basically like, "You're my boyfriend. We're not seeing other people. This is."
So it was exclusive.
Yeah, almost sort of not to belittle it, but it reminded me of like in second grade when a girl holds your hand and you're your girlfriend boyfriend for the next week, and that's like a big deal. It had that sort of childish kind of feeling to it,
but also the importance of like this. We're making a stand in this.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously when an adult says something like that, they're setting a boundary or at least expectations, right? So you should take it seriously for sure. It wasn't so much that I took it seriously; I just sort of noticed that feeling of like that sort of suddenness in a change in relationships, where all it takes is like one physical act and like, okay, this is how we feel now.
All right. Okay. And did you feel the intimacy at that point, or was that something you were freaking out because you weren't as close as you wanted to be boyfriend?
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think at the time I was really just kind of like, screw it, let's go with it. You know what I mean? I see more pros than cons.
Okay.
Let's go with it.
All right.
But that was a problem for me throughout the relationship, is that I didn't feel like that's ultimately what dissolved it, at least from my end, is that I just didn't feel like her boyfriend. It never really got to that point of feeling like kind of an immature relationship.
Okay.
Which again, I think is due to her inexperience. Also, I think just a lack of wanting on her part to have something more serious. She had a very, I don't think I'm using, it's not insular, but she had a very tight home life. She lived with her one sister, and another sister lived down the street from her, and they were super tight, very close. And then her mom would stay with her frequently, like a few times a year. So just like the whole female side of her family was very, very close knit and tight, and she didn't like to branch out from that a lot. So we'd really only hang out 2, maybe 3 times a week. Also,
out with them or outside of them?
Just together. With them or not, Yeah, and plenty of successful, normal adult relationships involve spending that much time together, or even less, But I think to me at the time, it sort of felt like, oh, we're not progressing, we're not going anywhere. We're getting into, we're well past a year into the relationship at this point,
Okay. So for the first year or so, did you jump into getting to know family? Were you spending all your time together, or was that hey, we're working all the time, so I'll see it work, and then?
Yeah, it was really, I got to know her family pretty quick. Again, her sisters were very, very close. As close as I've seen any set of siblings. Very involved in each other's personal lives, hang out.
So they knew everything about you and the relationship also, so you were
definitely
dating her, and was there a difference between what was your personal relationship stuff and what was her in the family, or was it all mixed together?
That's a good question. I think that I have a history of I had a rough childhood, and there's some poor family dynamics as a result of that, and I also have kind of a distrust of certain relationships because of that.
Okay.
So I did sort of immediately oh, this is her new boyfriend. He's immediately part of this. I spent holidays with them, which also just made sense because none of us were from Boston. They were from a different part of upstate New York. I'm from Rochester.
So you didn't have people in Boston.
Right, either. Right. So I would normally Christmas for me, it was just like, I would just like start drinking in the morning and play video games all day, which might sound sad to you people. It wasn't. It was awesome.
It's
my
a very
20s.
Merry Christmas.
Exactly,
So,
yeah. That was just how I preferred to spend my holidays, call the folks at some point,
Okay.
But yeah, so then when her family was there, it was just like, well, it makes sense I go over to your house and we all make a meal together, and,
And that got comfortable throughout the year? And
yeah, they were very welcoming, hospitable people, and I think very maybe excited about the fact that she had a boyfriend and was dating somebody who, like, had a job.
Right.
It was
It
nice
had that
to her.
level of maturity.
Yeah,
about the
exactly.
job, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there was also sort of things I remember her getting in some really, I'm going to say frightening fights with her sisters at times. With one sister she lived with, the cops were called a couple times because of fights they got into. I wasn't there for any of that. But I remember
Because they were that close but that intense.
Yeah, and definitely all of us were alcoholics at that point. Which can mess with relationships a little bit. Different levels, but all, at least by the actual definition of it. We're all drinking every day.
Okay. Is that because the stereotype is that's part of the business as well too? Did that impact that or fit with that, or was that different?
Yes and no. So the level I was at, I actually say I was drinking every day at that point, but now that I think about it, I actually wasn't, because we worked, we worked a 12, 14-hour day. We were allowed to have a shift beer at the end. So I might have been having one beer 5 days a week and then, drinking 1 day a week on my day off. But she worked considerably less hours, definitely like a date and night kind of drunk.
Okay. And you spent your time together when you weren't working?
Right. Like my 1 day off, we'd have date night basically.
Okay.
And I might have, one other day a week. She might come over after work when I got out at 1:30 in the morning. We'd hang out for a couple hours, but I had to be back at usually like 11 noon the next day.
Okay.
So,
and do you feel like that impacted your relationship positively, negatively? Didn't really make a difference in that?
for me, it was negative. I think for her, and I'm operating with an assumption here, but I think for her, the distance was nice and kind of felt safe.
Okay.
Again, of her having less experience in relationships, probably having her own host of trust issues. I think that space really worked for her.
Okay.
For me, it was fun at first. It got frustrating. And, I was probably asking myself some questions like, my job is getting in the way of me having relationships. Like, what am I doing with my life?
Okay. And was that within the first year, or did that get clear after that?
I'd say the first year. We were together about 18 months, and I'd say the last 6 months were both of us. Have you ever heard the metaphor about tipping over a fridge? Ending relationships like tipping over a fridge?
No, I have not heard that one.
You give it a couple pushes before it really gets enough momentum to fall over.
Okay.
So yeah, the last 6 months felt like we were both kind of tipping over the fridge.
Okay.
Still loved each other at the end. Like I said, had a really nice conversation recently. She's a big cat lover, so am I. So we just kind of updated each other about the cats in our lives, and
Nice.
Talked about how much we both hate bartending a little bit.
And were cats part of your life too? And you shared like cats, like
I didn't have cats at that point, but she had 3. So that was a big thing for her. I remember one of our first dates when she was a little bit drunk. She started talking. She's like, "Guys never like cats. You gotta like cats if you want to date." And I was like, "You got the right guy."
Okay. So that was a really important thing for her and fit.
Yeah, there was so I always had a notebook on me during those days because I was constantly working and just like a chef, you might think of a flavor combination you got to write down immediately. So I just always had a notebook on me, and there was something we talked about a lot during our relationships when I was like, "What are your cats' names?" And she told me Rusty, Henry, and oh man, it's right there. I want to say Sprinkles. Might have that wrong. Sorry if you're listening. But either way, I wrote them down in the back of the notebook, and then she saw it a few weeks into a relationship. She's like, "What are my cat's names in your notebook?" I was like, "I don't want to forget." She's like, "That's a big deal." That was something she always referenced like later on in the relationship.
Because it showed how important she was.
Right.
When the cats were.
She said the cats are important to me. I said, well, they're important to me too.
Okay.
Full disclosure, the cats are just also important to me.
Yeah.
I probably would have written them down. She was my worst enemy, just in case I met him someday. But
Okay, nice. So you mentioned love. Where was the point where love kicked in for you during that relationship?
Oh man, so I want to say we started saying those words a couple months in. She told me she loved me when she was blacked out. Didn't remember it, and I never forget the way I responded because it's not how you respond. She said, "I'm falling in love with you," and I said, "That's awesome." Which,
No high five though, or anything?
No. Well, she probably didn't want one. You know? I think, she was super drunk, just kind of, to her credit, responded with grace. Just, I was like, that's awesome. She was like,
But it was a genuine feeling coming for her, even though she was blacked out drunk.
Yeah, what do they say? Drunks and children? They're the only people that tell the truth, I think when it comes to certain emotions, that's true. So yeah, she told me she loved me. I felt kind of freaked out about it. Wasn't mad at it. Did think it was awesome. That was a genuine response, and then a few months later, we went on a trip up to Portland, Maine together. I pulled a bunch of industry connections, got a great hotel room, lined up all these nice dinners,
Nice.
Nice thing about being in the industry in that sense anyway is, and you have a good sense of what you want to eat and everything,
Mm-hmm.
But I told her I loved her on that trip. And I remember a little later in her relationship when we were kind of fighting, her being like, I thought that was so lame how you had to like set up a whole nice trip and everything, tell me you love me. Like there had to be all this dressing around it and everything. And I was like, oh, that wasn't really what happened. I just felt bad that I never responded to you. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, 2 months ago, or whenever it was, you told me you loved me. She's like, no, I didn't. And I was like, yeah, and I laid out the whole scene for her. She's like, I don't remember that at all.
So she was blacked out enough that she didn't have any memory of it.
Right. She had no idea. She thought when I said I love you when we were on that trip was the first time it had been said in that relationship.
Okay. And that you had planned the trip and created it in order to do that.
Yeah, like I was proposing to her or something. You know what I mean? Yeah, so that kind of, I told her that, and then, that just sort of doubly upset her,
Okay. So if it wasn't planned as part of the trip kind of thing, what shifted in your feelings at that time of the trip to be able to go, yeah, I do feel like I can genuinely say,
I think
it's awesome too, I love you.
I think I was pretty sure I felt that way by that point. Like again, she kind of threw something at me and I took my time processing it, and then responded when I was ready, yeah, and it was a very romantic trip, It
was or was not?
It was, yeah, absolutely, yeah, it was.
So you're feeling connected and feeling close.
Exactly. Like I guess some people might think that this makes it disingenuous. I think it's the opposite, but I think, the surroundings sort of brought it out of me. It was a very romantic trip. Okay. I was feeling that way. I wasn't being insincere.
But the point of the trip was to go have these nice meals and share time together.
Exactly. Have to hang out more than one day in a week, see how that goes.
Yep.
I think
Was that the first time you had?
We traveled together, yeah. Okay. Yeah. At least us in that relationship,
And that went overall,
yeah,
to go.
It went fine. Okay. I'm a very organized, serious traveler. That's definitely worth a laugh because anybody who knows me in my personal life knows that doesn't apply to anything else. You guys can't see the rest of my house. He can. It's a little cluttered.
I'll vouch, but it's got its own organizational system.
It could be worse. But absolutely. No. But when it comes to, because I worked in sales for a long time, so like traveling was my job. When I travel, I really like to have every point lined up, written down in a notebook. Okay. This is when we arrive at the airport. This is what train we're taking to this location to switch to this train.
Okay.
So
you would plan out the trip in that way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And that was not necessarily the character she'd seen you regularly, or that was a part of your personality character?
I think because I was so serious about work too, she had that impression of me. But it does make traveling nicer because unless you're a control freak and also want to plan everything, if you can just hang back and when I say this, I don't mean like we're being at this restaurant at this time. There's room for spontaneity, but like the boring travel details, I like to be very serious about and just walk down. And that way, when I'm traveling, I'm not.
And take care of it for you and for her.
Exactly. Just minimize anxiety. Yeah. Traveling's so anxious, so like. I think that made the trip extra nice, and the fact that I had, everything kind of lined up as far as where we were going. Okay. There's the Cryptozoology Museum is in Portland, which I highly recommend if you're into that stuff, or even if you're not. Really cool stuff.
Cryptozoology Museum.
So cryptozoology is Bigfoot, jackalopes, Yeti, things like this. The study of these animals. I really love this stuff. I don't know how seriously I take it. But aliens, all that conspiracy stuff. Yeah, well, the guy Lauren Coleman, if you ever seen a show on History Channel, and they're interviewing an expert about Bigfoot tracks, it's Lauren Coleman. That's that guy is. Okay. That's his museum. So it's a cool museum. A lot of scat, a lot of animal poop that's supposedly Bigfoot's poop or something. And then they have like a stuffed jackalope. and a Bigfoot statue, and then like a lot of castor plants of tracks and everything.
Nice.
It's a good time,
Yeah,
good geeky fun.
And was she excited about that
Yeah,
as well?
yeah, that was part of the reason we picked Portland to go to
Okay.
together. But I lined up a lot of goofy stuff like that. So I think she really appreciated that. I think that's a skill I have, is like setting up a trip like that.
Okay, so coming back from the trip after, saying "I love you," did things change, or did it go back to kind of where you were, or progress, or?
Yeah, that was kind of fine. The fact that she felt that I set up that whole trip just to say those words didn't come up till like a few months later.
Okay. Okay, so it was comfortable until that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this whole relationship, there was always an equal amount of comfort and discomfort in a lot of ways. You know, it was a very low maintenance, easy relationship.
Okay, which was the comfortable part.
Right.
Okay.
But that also made me uncomfortable in a way that, I was a couple years older than her, in a very different place in my life, and had a lot more experience in relationships. And, it was like, are we moving towards moving in together or getting married someday? Or, where is this going? Where she was just sort of like, I'm kind of good with this until it changes.
Okay. And did you have a goal or a desire for moving in, for being with somebody, for marriage, for what?
I think so. Again, I think there was a desire to build something in my life beyond work.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that desire was there.
And she seemed like a possibility of that after she claimed you.
Yeah, after she did set the terms of the relationship. Yeah, I mean, again, she was smart, funny, pretty,
and had potential to continue a relationship, but you got to the year, and then the fridge started pushing a little bit to kind of go, is this going somewhere?
This is how I'm remembering it. Timeline might be off. That probably also doesn't matter.
But it's the stage of that relationship.
Yeah. And that's, that's when I had, I started traveling more for work. That's when I started doing sales. So I was like, I'd work a 5-6 day week and then travel for 3 days and then come back and work a full week and then travel for 3 days. These are work trips or sales trips, but you're drinking a lot. That's really what you're getting. A lot of what I got paid to do was just go to Atlanta, hit up these 7 bars, make sure they know what brand I work for, leave a huge tip. That's kind of the gist of it. Yeah. There's more to it, but that's a lot of it. So I'd come back from these trips exhausted and like, I don't want to drink for a whole week. Just been drinking for 3 days straight. I'm tired. I just want to sleep in my own bed, watch some TV. And so date night kind of, I think, shifted, at least from her perspective, and probably in reality, from let's go out to these nice bars, restaurants, and have like one fun night a week together, to like, can we just stay home? Just sit around and watch TV.
Okay.
So I think like a little more relationship, probably a little less exciting for her. And I know because she told me she resented that too, because it was like, I'm still like going out and partying, going to all these different cities every week and seeing all this
you
cool
were
stuff.
getting to do that, but she was not.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, there's something exciting about the relationship for her, is I always had a bar or restaurant that I thought, oh, we got to go see this guy. We got to go, I want to try this drink at this place,
Okay.
And so when that kind of went away, I think she felt like something in the relationship that was important to her was taken away.
Okay. Because she was doing that together with you in a relationship. On her own, she wasn't doing that, or didn't have the connections.
Right. Still going out, still knew plenty of places, but like, I think even if she was doing that stuff on her own, still look forward to it with me.
Okay. And that's when the fridge started rocking.
Yeah.
A little bit. Okay. So what tipped it?
The actual final breakup, I had gotten back from one of these trips. I want to say DC, but who knows? And we just immediately got in a fight. Like she got to my place, came up to my room, and just we just immediately started on each other. And then she's crying, I'm crying. And she was like, I don't know how else to rectify this, but just break up. I was like, I think you're right.
And you fought off and on before that, or was this one of the first big fight?
No, the fighting was pretty bad at that point. There had been a wedding we went to where we got in a big fight, like kind of public, argument. Nothing terrifying, but still embarrassing.
But the fights were about what kind of topics?
From my perspective, not feeling like I was getting enough time. The relationship was getting enough time. From her perspective, definitely, we're not spending that time well enough. We're not doing, it's not
quality.
Yeah, exactly. It's not as exciting or fun as it used to be, which is totally fair. I think those were probably two main points. I'm sure if I sat here long enough, I could dig up a few more. But
Okay. But yeah,
that's the gist.
Okay, so then the last fight was you coming back, not having had quality time, and then coming back to a big fight where she kind of went,
Yeah, I think we both reached the point of this isn't even fun anymore. What are we doing? You know, like I actually think, especially considering her lack of experience and I'm going to say my lack of therapy at that point.
Okay.
I think we handled it very well. I was really proud of how we handled it. You know, we broke up. We told each other we loved each other. It was really, you know, long hug and kiss goodbye. She called her sisters to pick her up.
So you still acknowledge you had the care and love for each other, but that you weren't able to make it work and were enjoying yourselves.
Yeah, I think something she said in that moment, which really stuck with me, was some of the effect of, I'm afraid if we keep going, we won't be friends someday. Which I really, really valued, that foresight and maturity, you know.
Okay. And she turned out to be right.
Yeah, you know, again, like I said, we had a conversation a week ago. I don't see it, you know, and I went to Boston maybe a year and a half before the pandemic, just for a work trip. And we had lunch, ended up getting a couple drinks. And later in that day, I went back to the same bar. We'd like met at the bar next door to where I was working. So I went back there to grab something, and her and her sisters were sitting there. And I got to, you know, do the thing where they didn't see me and they were ordering drinks. So, like, you know, from behind them, you know, so they turned around with me paying for the drinks. I'm like, oh my God, it's Luke. And, you know, we had a really nice exchange. And like, oh, that was so nice of you. And I was like, yeah, it's just great to see you guys, you know.
So did that give you something that you didn't have when you ended the relationship? Or was that...
I don't know if that's the case. I think it was just encouraging.
Okay.
You know, it's.
So when it ended that you would be friends but didn't talk, or that you just were kind enough to see each other, or you weren't going to catch up or spend time together, or...
Yeah, I mean, I think her perspective is maybe we can be friends someday. I want to be friends someday. Okay. So we, you know, I not long after we broke up, I started splitting time between Buffalo and Boston. I was working in bars in both cities. If you're going to split your time between two cities, I recommend at least one of them is warm. You know, it's a weird kind of lateral move every week.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's where I was at.
Very different cities, but
very
similar climates, yes.
Yes, for sure. But, you know, it was still a lot of fun. And so on one of those trips back to Boston, we grabbed a drink and it just didn't go well. You know, we were just kind of, it wasn't like we were fighting. You could just tell neither of us were happy. Mm-hmm. I was dealing with some personal stuff involving a roommate at that time who had like stolen a bunch of money from me, and I was dealing with that all day, so I was just cranky. Mm-hmm. And I think we were both just kind of like,
but
mutual respect.
But are we friends?
Yeah, we were just not there yet, I think is what we decided. And then, you know, a year or two after that, that's when we had lunch, and I ran into her sisters, and that was a very nice exchange. That was very encouraging. So that made me feel like, you know, we're working our way back towards that. You know, I'm the kind of person that can go years without talking to a friend and not really think much about it. I don't know if that's a good or bad quality. It's probably a little of both. But yeah, so it's I'm very comfortable thinking like, oh, this is an ex of mine that I'm good friends with. Yeah, we went 4 years without talking, but that doesn't mean we're not friends. Okay. You know?
But you believe you can be friends with exes, and that is a...
Oh yeah, I think you should if possible. You know, if possible. I've had my share of toxic relationships. Okay. You know, I know plenty of people have. Like, don't let people that were harmful to you in your life just because you think it's more mature or an adult way to handle things.
Okay. But you have been able to maintain friendships with exes in some situations.
Whenever I can. Okay. Definitely not every time.
You consider.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that's what I'm saying. Even without us talking, I still think of her as a friend because I have positive feelings towards her. And when I do think of her, I think, I hope she's doing well. Okay. You know? So that to me, I think really is one of the defining characteristics of a friendship. You don't necessarily need to be talking or have necessarily amount of contact.
Okay. So the phone call was, how was that?
It was good. It was actually a text. She texted me like 3 a.m. A picture of a cup from a coffee house in Boston that's popular. It said, I never found the lid. I heard the Bills are kicking ass this season. I still think about you. I hope you're well. Okay. So first takeaway, she's drunk. Second takeaway, I have no idea what that. She's obviously referencing a personal joke from her relationship with the coffee mug. Again, sorry for watching this. I have no idea what that meant.
But it was important at the time enough to.
Well, it's cool that she remembered
to
it.
come back.
I don't need to.
Years later, yes.
Like she's obviously referencing something.
Yes.
You know. I'm assuming she borrowed my coffee mug and lost the lid. You know.
Okay. But you didn't have like a favorite lid or anything that you're like, I still miss that lid.
You know, at the time, I probably was very mildly annoyed about it and went and bought another mug. You know what I mean? You know, but I'm sure she's referenced.
It was a nice reference back to the relationship.
She's probably referenced something at some point that
past.
was a joke in a relationship. Okay. You know, like, did you find that lid yet? Whatever it was, you know. And then there's you know, the Bills are doing great this season. She's obviously referencing last season. You know. But it was nice. It was a very nice text. It was obvious that she was drunk based on the time and the way the information was organized in the text. But that doesn't matter. It's still very nice, you know.
Like that didn't open a door to anything. That was just a check-in.
Yeah, I mean, it opened a door to contact because it was 4 years out of the blue, you know.
Okay.
And so, you know, I messaged her back the next morning. I was asleep and she texted me, and you know, I said, didn't mention the cup. Just figured to sidestep that one. And, you know, just, oh, yeah, the Bills have a great team right now. Last season was great. The season starts soon. I'm excited. You know, I can't help but correct people, even when it's unnecessary. You know what I mean? So tried to do it in the nicest way possible, you know? You know, just very subtly, like, yeah, you're basically right.
You're basically right.
Tell the truth, not the facts. You're good.
Back to you,
yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then just, you know, how are things? And she responded to that, and... I think I was at work, so I was just kind of complaining about my job, and she's bartending now, so, you know, talked about we both kind of want to branch out. I told her how I'm doing stand-up comedy, which is something she'd always encouraged me to do. I wasn't doing it at that point in a relationship.
That was before you started doing that. But
right. I mean, yeah, that was my whole thing, where I was writing jokes and routines all the time, but nobody was seeing them because I work 14 hours a day. What am I going to do? Go to an open mic at 1:30 in the morning when I get out? You know, like, you know, we always find excuses to not do the things we want to do. But still, that was a nice thing to be able to share with her. Hey, I'm doing this now. You know, I'm sure she felt proud, you know. And then
it wasn't necessarily looking for a reconnection or a relationship.
No, I mean, again, I would very much like to have this be somebody that I text with a couple times a year.
Okay.
You know,
and that's the boundary you would enjoy and have as a friend.
Yeah, I mean, if we were, just for clarity, no interest in re-entering a romantic relationship with her. But if the relationship was stronger than that, greater than that, however you want to put it, if we were hung out a couple times a year, or if there was more contact than that, I'd also be good with that. But at the minimum, I would be cool with a relationship. Okay. Or just checking in a few times a year.
Would that be any different if you weren't in a relationship right now, or is that just what your feelings are?
You know, part of me would probably be thinking about at least sleeping with her again.
Okay.
Just being honest.
Because it was fun, and you enjoyed her, and it was a good relationship for a while.
Exactly. Yeah. This is somebody, you know, that I was in love with and still have fond feelings for, in the sense that I care about her and hope she's doing well, you know. Okay. So, but also I think that would be a bad idea, and also probably would straight up just not happen for a lot of reasons.
Whether or not you were in a relationship.
Don't think she would be interested, and we live in different cities, and you know, there's a lot of barriers there. Yeah. But I also think it would ultimately not be a good idea. So I'm grateful I'm in a space where that doesn't even enter my mind.
Okay.
You know?
So I'm bringing it up. You're not bringing that. I'm bringing it up from my thoughts. It wasn't what's happening, and then she.
Oh yeah,
called me at 3 in the morning.
Didn't get that impression at all. Yeah, no, it was literally more. I was like, for perspective, just asking myself the same question you just asked me. How would I feel about this if I wasn't with my current girlfriend? You know? Yeah. But, you know...
And being honest with yourself is important.
Yeah, exactly. So that's I feel like that's the feeling I'd have. Okay. That's a feeling about a feeling, so who knows, you know? Right. But, you know, I'm sure that would enter my mind. But ultimately, I think just being friends, that's the healthiest path forward. Not even necessarily reopening old wounds. That sounds dramatic, but... I don't know how else you would put it, you know, reopening old paper cuts.
Rehashing what was there and trying to see what's still left.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to be gained from that. You know, I think it's more just, you know, we still care about each other. Both think, you know, I hope she thinks the same way about me I think about her, you know, but I think she's a really, really intelligent, awesome person who really, really loves animals, you know. So yeah, that was really the rest of our conversation.
Okay.
I sent her a picture of Pops, and I said, Pops is my cat. You guys have probably seen walk by. And I said how the cat's in her life. One of her cats that I knew had passed away recently, and my last cat, Coco, had passed away 2 years ago, right at the beginning of the pandemic. So we kind of shared feelings about that. That was really nice. I hadn't had somebody I could really connect with in that way about that.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was a few weeks ago. We haven't really texted since.
Okay. So, what do you think you learned from being in this relationship, and what did you learn more of that you didn't know, and what was new that you might have learned from this relationship?
Yeah, that was a big one for me, where I was like, I need to go to therapy, because I just noticed the way I responded to things, the way I would take it personally that she didn't spend enough time with me. The way I was it felt like I was in the relationship arguing more quantity, and she was like more quality. That was when I was able to step away from that. That was some really good perspective.
Okay. So that prompted you to say, "Oh, I need some perspective, and therapy would give me some perspective on it."
Yeah,
to get there.
Because again, considering some of the problems she had in her life, I think it would have been easy to be like, she was a problem in the relationship. You know what I mean? But I think the truth is that no, I'm not going to say never, but hardly ever is it just one person. And the way I would always look at jobs, I had plenty of bartending gigs, or I was just working for crappy people who didn't know what they were doing. But I'd always try and walk away from that going, okay, that's all true. And that's fine, but how can I improve? What did I do wrong? And I think this is one of the first romantic relationships where I was able to do that and be like, yeah, she had all these problems, and that's not my fault. But I do wish I'd responded differently in this situation and in this situation.
So you learned a little more about how to separate yourself and her in relationship and reflect on yourself for what is yours.
Yeah.
And what do you need to do?
Yeah, exactly. It feels kind of a parallel to a thing that I've just learned in therapy in the last couple of years. When you notice yourself becoming dysregulated, you can kind of say to yourself, all right, this is a feeling I have. I accept it. This is why I'm feeling it this way. Actually, it makes sense that I would be feeling it. But I can also, it's a feeling, and I can put it in that box for it's a feeling. It's a valid thing, but it also I don't have to react.
Right, and you don't have to have behavior with it.
Exactly.
Because you can decide what the behavior is. Like you decided knowing the feelings you have, and that you learned and that you wanted the more quantity, then you could own that and go, I'm somebody who wants more quantity. So that's a criteria you wanted for you in your relationships or in your life or in something.
Yeah.
That you could look at.
Well, also just taking an honest look at, she complained about lack of quality. Maybe if there was more quality time, we would have spent more time together altogether. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
And just, noticing how I reacted to things. Like on more than one occasion, she'd get annoyed. I'd be reading something on my phone. She'd start talking to me, tell me a story, and then she'd get annoyed I wasn't paying attention. And I'd be like, you didn't check in with me about what I was doing. Like, maybe this is work related. Maybe this is important, And I would get really irritated and frustrated, and I'd start having these thoughts like, she doesn't care about what I'm doing. She opened her mouth, and the world should just stop when she starts talking, And being away from that situation, thinking back, now I'm able to be a little bit more like, well, maybe she didn't notice when I started looking at my phone. Or, I'm a little bit of a phone addict. I'm on it all the time. Maybe it wasn't so much about when it happened in the moments. Maybe she just, in general, wanted me to be more present,
Okay. And do you feel like you learned to be more present?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe not specifically because of that, but that was probably a spark that started me down the pathway of realizing that's something I could work on.
Okay.
And also feeling okay communicating, hey, I'm sorry, this is work related. It's very important. I want to hear your story, but it's gonna have to wait until I'm done with this thing.
Okay. And you were able to apply that, so you do that more in your relationships now?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, the relationship I'm in currently, we have really great communication. Both our therapists tell us that all the time. So that's like they're the experts. Yeah, absolutely. It's not perfect. It's a human relationship, but I do really notice. I actually just said this recently to her. Like, I really think if you dated me 20, 10, maybe even 5 years ago, we wouldn't still be in this relationship, because I would have, I was about to say screwed it up, but it's different than that even. I just, I would have done something that I would regret, that would have caused a fight that would have been bad enough where we would have been like, you know what,
that you would have reacted differently or not used the communication skills or had them as well as you've got now,
Right.
because you've worked on them, and because in relationships it's the opportunity to identify them and decide whether to work on them, and having that conversation with your current relationship is working on it and reflecting back.
Yep.
At the same time.
And also just setting boundaries.
Hmm.
You know, this is, you know, something I never felt comfortable saying in a relationship before this one is if the other person is dealing with something, not necessarily in crisis, but dealing with something, you know, being able to be like, I need you to tell me if this is crisis or not. Because if it is, then I can maybe drop everything and we can focus on getting you, you know, to the hospital or to a professional.
Okay.
But if it's not a crisis, I don't have room for it right now.
Okay.
And that's something I don't think I understood was okay to do before this relationship.
Okay.
That's something I'd always be like, okay, you're feeling bad, you're sad about something, I gotta put everything on
you.
Yeah.
To set aside my stuff.
Yeah, which probably builds some resentment. You know, I would think.
Yes, it builds resentment unless there's a mutual agreement about it. There's a balance over time of I'm going to set aside my stuff now, and you set aside your stuff. But if one is setting aside and the other is not, and you don't have that communication, that builds up the resentment consistently.
I think also too, even just not feeling like I could set a boundary there. You know what I mean? Because you know, a lot of times just having the comfort of knowing at any point in this conversation I can set a boundary makes it a little bit easier to absorb somebody else's negative feelings that they're going through. You know, because you can end it at any time. You just say, I'm sorry that something you said just triggered me and reminded me of something that I can't deal with right now, or, you know, like there's having the ability to step away, I think is very empowering in a relationship.
Okay. And that wasn't something you necessarily were able to do in the relationship we've discussed, or there were some seeds of being able to do that at that time, and now you've grown in them?
I think that relationship taught me that was important. I don't think that we really did that with each other at all, but I think that was the one where I learned, like, oh, I'm gonna need to figure out how to start doing this.
Nice.
You know,
nice. And it's nice that you are. What's the difference in your mood through that relationship, and what you've learned now in comparison?
Man, that's a good question. I think in the past, I'm not proud of this, but I've maybe had an attitude in relationships where I sort of thought of it as, like, if my partner was drunk, like, oh, now I gotta babysit them, you know, or if they're dealing with something, now I gotta fix this, you know, like, almost like I'm a parent and not a partner.
Feeling a responsibility and frustration.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, an obligation. And again, that would cause me to resent the person, and also it's very least condescending to look at your partner that way. You know, it's not something I'm proud of. It's something I noticed looking back over my life. I think I kind of had this attitude about it. That's not great. But yeah, with this relationship, I feel like I'm much more able to look at it as like, this is you know, this is another adult. They're not my responsibility. I want to help them wherever I can, but at the end of the day, we're two separate adults living our own lives. You know, and that actually, like, I'm able to look at her with more respect because of that, and the relationship with more respect.
Nice, excellent. Is there anything else you learned or you think would be important to share with anybody who might be relating to your story and your journey?
Yeah, you know, it's all practice. That's a really important thing about life. Us as comics, you know, frequently we'll go to an open mic, and you know, there's been nights where I get up stage and it's Kevin and it's two other people, and they're also comics, and they're also not paying attention to me because they're gonna go do their 5 minutes in front of silence
in practice.
And you know, when you really feel like you're good at this, you walk away from a night like that being like, this is what I learned. You know, same thing, like I said about the job. Even if they were terrible owners and they're idiots, didn't know what they were doing, this is what I learned. This is how I can improve. So I think it's the same thing with relationships, you know. Allow yourself to get better. Allow yourself to grow. And if you're uncertain what setting boundaries means, I'm sure some of you are, because again, it was a total mystery to me a few years ago. Go to therapy, get some books, learn about setting boundaries, practice doing that. It's important, and it will be very helpful to you in your life and relationships.
Thank you very much, Luke. I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. This is cool.
Cool. And thank you for being on Relationship Ready Talks. And thank you for watching. Hope you continue to subscribe and build a relationship with us so that we can continue. And if there are particular highlights from this or any other episodes that you're like, I want to hear more about that, then please comment and we'll try to accommodate you and support you, because that's the purpose, is to relate. Thank you very much. See you next time.
Bye.